Good morning. Well, good morning and welcome to the Creation Conference. On behalf of our senior pastor, Dr. Gross, I welcome you here to West Conroe. We're so glad that you could be here this morning to hear about dinosaurs. It's going to be a fun morning, and we're excited for you to be here. Just very quickly, a quick note to our educators and our adults who are here. Some of you have asked about DVDs. Is it possible to get one of those or something of that nature? We will be doing live streaming. So if you go to YouTube in West Conroe, and you can scroll down on the different options there, and you will find this Creation Conference listed there, and you'll be able to see those from there. Also, another quick note. As you exit the back doors right here and just kind of merge right, you'll find water fountains and the restrooms. And if you go to the left and go away, you'll find a plethora of resources from today's presentation and different resources that speak to just a broad range of categories related to creation. So you'll want to check those out as well. Today, our speaker is Mr. Brian Thomas, and Brian is a graduate of Stephen F. Austin University, having his bachelor's degree and his master's degree there. He has a master's degree in biotechnology. He's also taught in junior high and high schools and Christian schools all over the state of Texas, teaching biology, chemistry, and anatomy as a professor in the Dallas area universities as well. Mr. Thomas has been a science writer and editor at ICR, where he contributes news and magazine articles. He speaks on creation issues and helps in the research of original tissue fossils. He is also the author of Dinosaurs in the Bible, a contributor to the Guide to Creation Basics and Beyond, and a Guide to Dinosaurs. This gentleman knows a lot about dinosaurs, so we're excited to have him here this morning. Before we get started this morning, before we welcome Mr. Thomas up, let me open us up in a quick word of prayer. Would you pray with me? Father, what a joy it is to come together like this, that we might glorify you by understanding more about your creation. As we come together like this, knowing that your presence is with us, we ask that you would open our minds and our hearts to you, and that you would be with us. Father, I lift up Mr. Thomas to you as he shares with us this morning. I pray that you'd use him in a powerful way to stir our hearts to understand more about your wonderful creation and the glory that it gives to you. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. Well, are you ready to hear about dinosaurs? Oh, come on. Are you ready to hear about dinosaurs? Yeah, okay, there we go. Well, join me in welcoming Mr. Brian Thomas.
Thank you. Who has ever seen a dinosaur skeleton right up front? Good. The first time I saw one, I must have been like old, and I remember. They set that skeleton, and it was a big T-Rex with all these teeth, and they set it right in front of the front entrance. And I walked in, and I was holding my mommy's hand, and then they opened the doors, and then, and I grabbed my mom's hand because those teeth were so big and scary. And I said, Mom, what is that thing? It's a big monster there. And she said, well, that's good. Where did it come from? Even though I was just 6 years old, I was starting to ask these questions right then. Where did this come from? I've never seen anything like this. It's not in my backyard. I've never seen it in the zoo. I'm glad it's not in my backyard alive because, it would eat me, and that would be, no fun. And so I said, Mom, what is it? How did it get here? How did it turn into a fossil? And she said, let's take you to the museum helper. So she took me to the museum helper, and she was a nice lady, and my mom said, my son, Brian, for you. And so I said, what is that? And the lady said, that's a dinosaur. Where did it come from? And she said, that dinosaur came from a lizard, and it evolved into a dinosaur. And that's what the lady told me. and that lizard actually evolved from a fish millions of years ago. And she said, a fish turned into a dinosaur over millions of years. And so I said, okay, because she was the museum lady, so she should know, right? I mean, after all, she was there in the beginning when fishes were morphing into dinosaurs. Wait, was she there in the beginning? No, she was not there. But that's all I've ever been taught. That's all I was told, is that these things evolved over millions of years. So listen to this. Later on, I began to follow the Lord Jesus, and I began to study my Bible. And I opened up my Bible, and you know what I did not see in that Bible? I did not see anything about fish or one kind of animal morphing into another kind of animal. In fact, I saw the very opposite. Have you ever read Genesis 1? And in Genesis 1, it says that God created each of these creatures to reproduce after its own kind. Not between kinds. Not from fish to a different kind like dinosaur, but dinosaurs would make dinosaurs. Fish would make more fish. People would make more people. Dogs, dogs. Cats, cats. But not dogs to cats, not dats and cogs. It's just cats and then dogs. Dinosaurs. And so I thought, who's right? Is the lady at the museum right? Or is God right? Well, I was asking the question. And so here's what I found out. I found out that there's solid scientific reasons that God did get it right all along. And I have these 5 clues, and I think that if every Christian young person just knew these 5 clues, that each of you would be able to put together the pieces for yourself, and that you could decide if God got it right in the Bible or if the museum people got it right. So, are you ready for the 5 clues? 5 clues. Clue number 1, I want you to say it out loud with me. It is clever design. Say that.
Clever design.
You know, I had my kids. I have kids. I have 5 kids, and they go to a school where their teacher is a Christian, and so the teacher said, "I know about dinosaurs. I don't think that they ever really existed. They never really existed." And so my kids came home and said, "This is so-and-so." I don't tell you her name because I don't want it to get back to her. It might get kind of embarrassing. "Mrs. So-and-so said that dinosaurs don't even exist. Dad, what do you think of that?" And I thought, oh boy, talk about throwing out the baby with the bathwater, and you can ask your adult teachers what that means. But no, they did exist, and we're going to show you why. We know they did exist. But here's the thing. Some Christian teachers and parents and other people in Christian circles are so confused about dinosaurs because they have only ever been told that dinosaurs lived and died millions of years ago, and they evolved, so this evolution in millions of years, that's not in the Bible. And so in order to get rid of the evolution in millions of years, they also get rid of all the dinosaurs. But I'm here to give you some good news in the form of 5 clues, and the good news is that science, the idea that these dinosaurs never really did evolve, that God created them. And they look like they were created because they show evidence of clever design. Now, my favorite kind of dinosaur is the sauropod kinds of dinosaurs. Say sauropod. Sauropod. Thank you, front 5 rows. Back rows. We're going to say lots of dinosaur names today, so get ready to say your dinosaur names, okay? Sauropods are the 4-legged. So 4 legs on the floor, long tail, long neck, and these are clever design right there in the sauropod. So I went to investigate a sauropod dinosaur named Diplodocus. Say it.
Diplodocus.
There's the body of a Diplodocus. No, that's not a Diplodocus. That's the Diplodocus. And I'm looking at this beautifully designed, clever design in the skeleton of this enormous animal, 90 feet long. His neck goes out for 30 feet. You try to build something that's 30 feet long, 90 feet long total. That's 30 tons. Can you build something that can walk by itself and not fall and crumble and get crushed? That's a clever trick, isn't it? Well, it turns out that these sauropods had all the design features that they needed in order to walk and not fall, and they had all together, all in one place, all at the same time. Let's look at the hip. You know what a hip is, right? Yeah. These are your hips. Hips, hips, hips. Dinosaurs had hips, and these hips had an arch shape, and they had pillar-like legs. You know what a pillar is. It's the support beam that's underneath buildings. These pillars were built 2,000 years ago by the ancient Romans, and they built these aqueducts where they carried water on top of these arches with pillars. Pillar arch design. So when I see pillars and arches together, I'm thinking in terms of clever design. No, nature didn't do this. Natural processes don't build arches with pillars. But you know, someone smart could have done it, like maybe God. And so I think God's responsible. You know, these things got so big and so heavy, and they kept growing bigger and bigger as they ate more and more food, and they got heavier and heavier. What if his body got big, legs stayed tiny? Would that work? That would not work. So as his body got bigger, what happened to his legs? They got bigger. And so we have this clever design in the knee joint. Look at this knee joint. The big, wide knee joint here, it got wider and wider and broader to support all that dinosaur weight. Look at these vertebrae. Say vertebra. Now, what is that? That's your backbone, isn't it? You've got these little bones in your back. Dinosaur backbones are most of the dinosaur backbones are like bricks. They're big, thick, solid bones. But not these. These have raised ridges and hollowed out spaces. And you know what? It reminds me of my bicycle. Who has learned to ride a bike? Oh, great. You all have wonderful parents. Yay, parents. Teach your kids to ride a bike. And when we look at our bicycle, we see hollowed out spaces, raised ridges. So it's lightweight. It's lightweight. Dinosaurs had weight-saving features. Lightweight bones so that he could have a 30-foot-long neck. Can you imagine a 30-foot-long neck with big, blocky, heavy vertebrae that weighed a bunch of pounds, and he long neck, and he has all these thick vertebrae, and he'd have his little head at the end, and when he tries to lift his head, he can't because his neck's too heavy. And so his head is down here, and all he can eat is worms and dirt. Poor dinosaur. No. He's got clever design in all of his features. He even has a teeny tiny head that doesn't weigh very much. See his head way out there? Itty bitty head, so that that head is just the right size, shape, and weight to make him do all the things that he used to do long ago when he was alive. He could stand in one place, and scientists have reconstructed the way that he moved. He could take his head and eat just standing. He could take that neck and just eat all the leaves on all the trees. He could stand there for just hours, 2 hours. And then when he ate all those leaves, he could just take a few steps. I think I'll walk over here. And then he could eat all the leaves on all the trees and shrubs just a few feet over. So he was able to eat with efficiency. He didn't have to spend a lot of energy to get his food. He just stood in one place and ate with that long neck. Really, really clever design. Who uses Lego blocks? Yes, Lego blocks. I want you to do this. This is your clever design task. Take your Lego blocks. You can use anything, actually. I suggest Lego blocks, but you could use peanut butter if you want. Here's your task. Take your Lego blocks and build a machine that fits in your hand. And whatever you put in it, Lego blocks or peanut butter or, dust mites or whatever, whatever you put in it needs to turn itself into a dinosaur and then hatch and then assimilate food environment and grow bigger and be able to make a copy of itself. Can you make a machine that complicated? No way. You see, it's way too complicated for any genius human to make a machine that makes itself. What am I holding here, kids? That is an egg. That's a fossil dinosaur egg. And when that little dinosaur, cute little dinosaur, wouldn't you like to have a cute little baby dinosaur as a pet? Yes. No, you wouldn't, because he would eat your hand off. Ouch. But that little baby dinosaur, he would hatch out of there, and he would grow up big and tall. In fact, that's a hadrosaur. Say that. That's a duck-billed dinosaur. He wasn't a duck. He just had a duck-bill-shaped mouth, you see. And so he was 45 feet long from nose to tail. Great big dinosaur. And he could make a copy of himself by laying these little hadrosaur eggs. So we see all over the fossils, we see clever design, just what we would expect if we were reading right out of Genesis. Let's look at what Genesis has been saying to us all along. It says, "And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind." Beasts of the earth. Hey, hello. Do you think that dinosaurs qualify as a beast? Yes. Oh yeah. If anything qualifies as a beast of the earth, wouldn't it be dinosaurs, the biggest, baddest beast that ever walked the earth? Yes! Big beasts. You know what? It says God made it. God made, not natural processes made. God made. So God deserves the credit for making these big dinosaur beasts. And he did it with lots of clever design that he built into their bodies. And that's the first. And we want you, as families, to make sure that you have solid resources with the latest science and Bible-respecting views. For example, in our book called Guide to Dinosaurs, where you can learn more about the clever design of dinosaurs. Okay, that's the first clue. What was the first clue? Anyone remember? Clever design. Very good, class. And then the next clue is catastrophic death. Say that. Catastrophic death. Okay. Do you know what the word catastrophe indicates? Some of you do. Some of you are not raising your hand, so I'm going to assume you don't know. But a catastrophe, is it a catastrophe good or bad? Bad. Oh, it's bad. It's terrible. It's a calamity, a catastrophe. Everywhere we see dinosaur fossils, we see evidence of catastrophic death, not normal death. These things didn't just die in the field like a cow. And because what happens when a cow in a field dies, who comes to eat the poor dead cow bits? Raccoons and wolves and everything else. So the cow gets torn apart. And turn into a fossil when he dies? No, cows are not turning into fossils. In fact, turning into a fossil. Hardly anything is turning into a fossil. How do we get these giant creatures to turn into fossils? That's the mystery, isn't it? Well, one way to solve that mystery is to think of catastrophe. Now, here is a fossil of a dinosaur called Camarasaurus. Say that. Camarasaurus. Yeah, very good. And so the Camarasaurus has long neck and legs that go straight down. By the way, that's a dinosaur. Legs that go straight down, reptile. And look at his neck. You see his neck? How bent that? Do you think his neck could really bend that far, like normally when he was walking around and alive? No, if you say no, you are correct. His neck could not bend that far. And that's what these scientists said very clearly when they said that the post-mortem dorsiflexion disarticulated the zygapophyses such that it was preserved in a pose that was unlikely attainable in life. Piece of cake. In other words, the catastrophe that buried him with all this mud was so immense and powerful that it broke his neck. Ouch! So he got covered with mud. Hello, is that a catastrophe? Yes, that's total catastrophe. Catastrophic death of the Camarasaurus. This is kind of sad, isn't it? Did you bring your handkerchiefs? You might have to dab the tears of the sad death of these dinosaurs. Like the Say that one. Very good, Compsognathus. And, so I'm reading the National Geographic book on dinosaurs, and it has a whole page on Compsognathus. And let's read what these scientists say. Luckily for scientists who were there and know everything and have white lab coats. Luckily for scientists, Compsognathus lived close to the shore of a calm lake. Now wait a minute. Can any scientist today know anything about where Compsognathus lived? Can they know a little bit about how the Compsognathus died? Yes, but not how it lived. So this is a story that I'm being told. Okay, so they're telling me stories in these books. All right, let's continue. After death, the animal's body sank to the bottom of the lake, and the calm waters calm down. Remain calm. We know what happened here. We are the experts. The calm waters ensured that the bones were not broken up before the process of fossilization, a process that I was taught takes millions of years, could begin. Okay, that's the story. But who has ever been to a calm lake? Have you been to the lake? Okay, some of you aren't raising your hands. You've got to go visit a lake. Come on, moms and dads, take these people to a lake. Hands down. Who has seen a dead fish on the shore of a calm lake? Okay, good. Do you think that those dead fish that you saw are turning into fossils? No, they're not. Those dead fish are stinky. Why are those dead fish stinky? Because they're rotting. Dead animals by the shore of a calm lake don't turn into fossils. They rot. They go away. After 2 weeks, that fish is gone-ola. I think the same thing would have been true with Compsognathus. In fact, how do you even get a fossil? The only way I can imagine you get a fossil is to cover that creature with mud. So, lots of water, lots of mud, Noah's Ark, Noah's flood. That's where I'm going with this. Noah's flood explains how you get so much mud to cover these animals. This is a Compsognathid type dinosaur, and he's got this neck arched back, and boy, is he in pain. He might be choking on mud there. And look at this one. Oh boy, that looks normal, and doesn't it? Does that look normal? Oh, wait a minute, class. Scientists were there, right? No, they weren't there. But the scientists say that the calm waters were so calm that they took this creature's head and squished it over to his rear end. Hello? That is not calm. That is catastrophic. Catastrophic death. And notice, both of these dinosaurs were buried in mud. Mud that later hardened into rock. So did this dinosaur. Catastrophic death. And the poor guy died, and he may be choking on mud. He's trying to breathe, but he's breathing in mud, and he arches his neck back. Boy, what a sad day that was. We see dinosaur fossils all over the world. This is from Utah. I just showed you one from China and some other places. And most of the time, you see dinosaur bones are all broken into pieces. When I did a dinosaur dig last summer, I was digging around in Montana, and I pulled out a dinosaur bone, and there it was, and it was just a piece of a bone. It was like these bones and all these other creatures' body parts and plant bits and everything else were put into a washing machine, and it just sort of went tumble, 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 and then dumped all the bones out across the entire state of Montana. That's a lot of catastrophe. That's a big old catastrophe, and we have more of it in Utah, all these states across the United States. Who recognizes that plant? Say it. Palm tree. Did you know that the palm trees that look just like today's palm trees, they're found right next to dinosaur bones? Palm trees look just like today's trees. Lots of swamp trees are in the dinosaur layers. What's the fossil that's beneath the palm? What is that? A fish. Now, when I've been to the shore of a calm lake, I've seen those rotting fish. What's the first part of the fish that rots? It's the fins. Are the fins rotten on this little fishy? The catastrophe that overwhelmed this fish was so rapid, so fast, that it preserved even the fins. Now that's quick. It's like the water came, brought in mud, buried all the creatures, dinosaurs, other kinds of creatures. And when I did my dig, we found little bits of turtles, alligators. We found garfish scales, all mixed with the dinosaur bones, and swampy plants, like this plant here. But all these creatures look the same as today's creatures. Well, here I am. I'm in South Dakota looking at the famous Tyrannosaurus Rex. Say that? There he is, the famous T-Rex. His nickname is Stan. And so I'm looking at Stan, and Stan is about to eat me. And I handed my camera to a stranger, and I said, "Would you please take my picture?" And he said, "Sure, I'll do it." And he picked up the camera, and he didn't even count down. He just went, "Here you go." So that's what I look like when no one counts down on the picture. And I'm about to suffer a catastrophic death there at the mouth of Stan the T-Rex. And I'm thinking about Stan, and you know what? He may have weighed, scientists estimate, 7 tons. 7 tons of T-Rex. Arrgh. He's walking around. How did he turn into a fossil? There's like hippopotamuses and elephants. They don't turn into fossils today. Even the large creatures' bodies, they rot. Here's T-Rex, and he's walking around, and scientists, secular scientists who don't respect God's word at all, they tell stories about how T-Rex may have died. And one of their stories, the most common one, is that he died of natural causes, and he laid down, and he happened to lay down right next to a stream. And the stream had a little bitty flood, and it overflowed its banks, and the mud from that overflow covered the dead T-Rex. Okay? That's the story. But I don't buy it, because if streams with overflowing mud make fossils back then, why aren't they making fossils today? Are there fossils forming beside streams today? Everybody say no. No. We don't have fossils forming beside streams, let alone fossils of big giant creatures like this. I think he's 7 tons. I think when the stream overflows its banks, he's going to go like this. "What is this, a little bit of the water over here? I'm going to just walk right out of here. No problem, I'm 7 tons. 7 tons. Here's what I think. Something that was more powerful than 7 tons, more than 7 tons of mud, came like this, like a giant tsunami. Who saw the pictures of the tsunami that wiped over the Japanese tsunami? Did you see some of those pictures? What did it look like? Did the water look nice and clean and pretty water? No, it was a wall of mud. I think this giant wall of mud came, and the T-Rex went, "I'm 7 tons, but that's a lot bigger than me." And he got buried in mud just like that. Catastrophic death of T-Rex. And that's how you get a fossil. Now this one is a fossil of a small turkey-sized, full-grown dinosaur the size of a turkey. And his name is Sinosauropteryx. Say that. Now, what's he buried alongside? A fish. It's a sturgeon fish. Now, the age assignment that evolutionists have given this rock layer is 180 million years. And in all that supposed time, the engines of evolution, natural selection and mutations, they've transformed the sturgeon fish into a sturgeon fish. Wait a minute. No evolution has taken place. No change has taken place. The sturgeon fish back then looks just like the sturgeon fish today. Same with the palm trees. Same with birds. We have bird fossils that look just like today's birds, like ducks. There's even a fossil parrot right alongside dinosaurs. A fossil parrot. Well, that's catastrophic death all over. Even Antarctica has dinosaur fossils showing that this mud wiped over the whole world. You know, I'm thinking about something here. I'm thinking about mud and water all over the world. Think of an event, a big catastrophic event that is described in the Bible that involves lots of water, lots of mud, Noah's ark, Noah's flood. Yes. You know, if Noah's flood was real, I wonder what I would expect to see. What would I expect to see if Noah's flood really happened? Maybe billions of dead things that were buried in rock layers laid down by water, and I'd expect to see those all over the earth. Well, let's look at the earth. What do we see all over the earth? Billions of dead things, including dinosaurs, that were buried in rock layers laid down by water, and we see those all over the earth. You know, the Bible's been saying this the whole time. Genesis 7 says this, and the waters prevailed on the earth. Not just part of the earth, the whole earth. All the hills were covered. Now, these are the high hills that existed before the flood, but they were covered. And all flesh died that moved on the earth. Did dinosaurs have flesh? Yes. Flesh, you know, the meaty part. Flesh. All flesh died. Another verse says that every creature that had the breath of the Spirit of life in its nostrils, so it has nostrils and walks on land, those creatures died. Did dinosaurs have nostrils? Yes. Well, sure, because if you look at the end of their snout, there's these two little holes, right? The end of their snout, nostrils, breathing, so they had the breath of life. 2 of every kind of dinosaur, therefore, must have gone on board Noah's ark. Oh, dinosaurs on the ark. And you say, Mr. Thomas, that's silly. Dinosaurs, the sauropod dinosaur with 90-foot-long body, how could that ever fit on Noah's ark? Well, you know, I think that the Mr. Noah, he didn't have to take the great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaddy dinosaur. He could have taken a little kid dinosaur. Because even the giant sauropod dinosaurs that got to 90 feet long, they started out by hatching from an egg that was no larger than a football. So they started small. So I think they could have had a couple of the small ones on board. If you take all the 50 basic dinosaur kinds that we think existed around the world, and you put those on the ark, you know what? That would take up one small corner of one of the 3 decks on Noah's ark, and that's it. So yes, dinosaurs could fit on the ark. And it's that Noah brought 2 of every kind of creature onto the ark. So that means they would have survived the flood on the ark. Now, who remembers the first clue?
Clever design.
You got to say clever design. Good? Okay. Now, the second clue was? Catastrophic death. Who's my A students over here? Excellent job. Third clue, clashes with dragons. Say it.
Clashes with dragons.
Now for this clue, we're not going to look at fossils anymore for a minute. For a minute, we're going to look at human history. This is a place that we're not supposed to go. According to the placard that is at the museum underneath the stand T-Rex, it says this: no one has ever seen a living dinosaur. Class, is that a scientific statement? How would a scientist verify the truthfulness of that statement? That scientist, class, he would have to interview everyone who has ever lived. Can any scientist interview everyone who has ever lived? No, that's not a science statement. That's a statement claiming to know everything. Everything God does, not any person, human, I mean. So that's not a trustworthy. That's not a science statement. Living dinosaur, and then here we go. It says what we know of dinosaurs comes from careful study of fossils. Only look at the fossils. Don't look at human history. You know what? Before we pretend that human history has nothing to tell us, let's actually look at human history to see what the people who lived before us believed and thought and taught. Who recognizes this? Have you ever heard of the Chinese zodiac? The ancient Chinese zodiac. The Chinese people, they kept time according to this a record of this memory device, and so they have every year it's symbolized by a new animal. So that is a tiger. Okay, so there's a year of the tiger zodiac. This is a chicken, the year of the chicken. This is a rat. They have the year of the rat. Are chickens and rats and tigers alive today? Yes. But one year they had the year of the dragon. But dragons are no longer alive today. Well, why would they stick a fictional, completely fanciful creature in the middle of all these regular, normal, everyday, still living creatures? Maybe when they built this zodiac, the dragon was still alive. If it was, we might be able to call that ancient dragon a descendant of some of the dinosaurs that survived the flood on Noah's Ark. What about this awesome-looking creature carved in an ancient device, and it looks like this? It's got these long necks, long tails, legs that go straight down. What is this, and why did these people carve thousands of years ago? Why did they something that looks just like a sauropod dinosaur? Maybe they actually saw one. And then thousands of miles away in England, there's a church called Carlisle Cathedral. And in this church, there's a brass decoration around Bishop Bell's tomb. What do you see on Bishop Bell's tomb? You see legs that go straight down. You see long tail. You see long necks that intertwine. Now, the necks are hard to see because they've been worn away, because this was carved in the 1400s, hundreds of years ago, and they put this in the middle of the church floor. I don't know why they did that. I was there 3 weeks ago, so I was able to check it out, and the man of the church, they call him the rector, he moved the carpet for me so I could see Bishop Bell's tomb, and he moved the carpet, and there it was. Imagine your pastor, he dies, and we bury him right in the middle of the gym floor. That's what they did. I don't know why. But there he was, and I was able to look at this myself and see what looks to me like the same thing I saw in the seal and here in this ancient Egyptian palette. Look, I wonder who carved this. And why did they carve a creature? You know, here's people, here's a bull. So it's not like he's carving, goblins and ghosts. These are real creatures, possibly. So if this is a real creature, why does it look like its legs go straight down and it has long intertwining necks? Not only did they get the anatomy pretty close from what we know from fossils, they also show maybe some habits. Maybe these big, giant, long-necked dinosaurs that lived after the flood, and they called them dragons because the word dinosaur wasn't invented until 1842. They called them dragons. Maybe they knew that these creatures butted heads or butted necks with one another. That's a possibility. So we have these creatures carved in castles. This one's from France. Look at that, legs that go straight down if he's standing up. But if this is a crocodile, then why does he have... If this is a crocodile, then why don't his legs go out? Crocodiles and lizards, who's ever seen a gecko running up the wall? You seen geckos running up the wall? Yes. Now, think of that gecko running up the wall, and what do his legs do? His legs go out beside his body and then down. He's got those big sticky toe pads, right? And so his legs go out and then down, and he sticks on the... Gecko runs, his whole body wiggles like this, like this. But not the dinosaurs. We know from fossils that the dinosaur legs went straight down. Whether it's a sauropod or a theropod. Say theropod. Theropod. These are the ones with the 3 big toes like T-Rex. And the theropod dinosaurs, their legs went straight down, so they were always with their knees bent. Rawr, rawr, always like this, ready to go. Legs straight down. That's what makes a dinosaur reptile. Why don't these legs go out and then down? They look like they go straight down. Even this one, carved in a tapestry in the castle of Chateau du Blois in France. We have these scales, so it's a reptile. We have claws and teeth and a long tail and a long neck and legs that go straight down. And then we've got this little cutie baby dinosaur. Yeah, we should have him as a pet. Until he grows up and eats you. And that would be bad. So I think that when people moved into these swamp areas, that their little kids were running around in the backyard, and there's little Johnny, and Johnny's trying to play, and Sally and Susie are trying to play in the backyard, and then here comes a monster from the backyard. and it eats Johnny, and it eats Sally, and then Mom and Dad go, oh no, Johnny and Sally have been eaten by these monsters. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get the neighbors together, and I'm going to get them to get all their weapons. Bob, bring your axe. Fred, who's Fred? Is there a guy around? Where's all the guys? Okay, Fred, you're Fred today. Bring your spear, Fred. All right, and I'll bring my AK-47, and we're going to go into this back alley, and we're going to get rid of this monster because he keeps eating my kids, and I'm sick and tired of it. So we get rid of the monster. And we know this historically is true, that whenever people move into a place, the first creatures to go away are the big ones. So bears, for example, are extinct from Dallas, where I lived, and yet there's a creek called Creek right next to my house. So bears used to live in Dallas, but they've gone extinct from Dallas. Why did bears go extinct from Dallas? Because when people moved in, the bears kept eating their kids. And they said, let's get rid of these bears, man. Wolves, got rid of the wolves. Used to be all over here. So that's a possible reason why some of these dinosaurs have gone extinct from regions all around the world, including this region in France, which may have had dinosaurs up until the 1500s when that was carved. Maybe these dinosaurs even lived in the Americas. Here I am with my son. This is my son. His name is Noah, and he's actually taller than me now, so this was a couple of years ago. But we went backpacking into New Mexico in the desert because I heard about this place called Painted Cave, and we hiked for 26 miles that day with no water, and it was uphill both ways. And we saw these amazing carvings. What are these things? I mean, I'm looking at this, like a weird-looking head there. Some of these are actually, normal, like a wolf up here, maybe, and a horse. You tell me this, but look, there's this dude. There's a dude there with a leash, and he's holding a what? What is that? Well, I don't know what it is, but you can decide for yourself what it is. To me, it looks sort of like a dinosaur. And the last one I have is a carving from Cambodia in the Far East. And these people, and I'm sorry, this is supposed to be straight up and down, so if you will just tilt your head to the right, we'll pretend that it's straight up and down, but this is a pillar of a temple. And in that temple, we've got a bull. Up here, there's a parrot and all kinds of normal creatures. And then there's this weird creature that's like a lion with a human face. But then right here, what in the world is that one? What do you think that one looks like? Now, how could they have carved this? How could they have carved this creature with legs that go straight down and bony plates on its back? How could they possibly have carved a creature 1,000 years ago, before any dinosaur book was ever written, before these fossils were ever discovered and described? How could they possibly have carved this without that knowledge, without the knowledge of the fossils? What do you think? Maybe they saw one of these still alive after the flood, wandering around because they called it a dragon. Every culture has its legends of dragons. And did you know what? There's one in the Bible. If we were looking at Job all this time, we would have had no surprises, because look, it says in Job in the Bible, chapter 40, God speaks to Job out of the whirlwind, and he says, look now at Behemoth. Behemoth. Say that.
Behemoth.
Behemoth. What is the behemoth? Or what was the behemoth? Whatever it was, God says he made it along with you. He made Behemoth on day 6 of creation along with humans, which he also made on day 6 of creation. Land animals and people on day 6. See now, his strength is in his hips. Those dinosaur hips. That's what it is. And we know that from dinosaur fossils. Maybe it's a dinosaur. Oh, here's the thing here. He moves his tail like a cedar. And if you open up your Bible and you read Job 40, the translation notes at the bottom of your Bible, which wrote, God didn't write the translation notes. Behemoth might have been a hippopotamus. So, I thought maybe Behemoth was a hippopotamus. Let's go to the zoo and find out what a hippopotamus is like. So I went to the zoo, and I bought my notepad, and I looked at the hippopotamus, and I waited till the hippopotamus turned around so I could see the big hippopotamus backside. And he's got this little flippy-flappy tail, right? And then I watched the hippopotamus fertilize the yard with his flippy-flappy tail. And spread his stuff out all over the place, and it was grody, man. It was yuck. But this little flippy-flappy tail, I thought, does that remind me of a cedar tree? And I thought, there's nothing about this flippy-flappy tail that reminds me of a tree. A tree is long. A tree's got a big, thick trunk. A tree is round. This thing is flat. It's short. It's not long. And it doesn't even move like a tree. A tree sways. But this flippy-flappy tail, it does this. I think that Job was looking at a creature that is no longer alive, a creature that has gone extinct, a creature that was maybe a dinosaur. And so we can learn about all these things. We can learn about all these things at the Institute of Creation Research. You know what? Let's just breeze through the last few clues. And these are the last two clues. And this is a sciencey clue, and it has to do with collagen decay. So everyone take your pincher and grab a pinch of skin somewhere, not your neighbor's skin, your own skin. All right? Now, pinch some skin and then let it go. What happens to the skin that you just pinched? Does it stay in a little tower like this, or does it? Oh, it goes right back. And that's tough stuff, isn't it? So it turns out that the reason your skin is so tough, the reason your bones are so tough, is because your skin and bones have a protein in them called collagen. Say collagen. Collagen actually decays. It falls apart, turns into dust after less than 1 million years, and yet we have collagen in dinosaur bones. Now, when I was a little kid, I went to the museum, and they said, when you look at a bone, a dinosaur bone, you're looking at minerals, not any part of the original bone. But scientists found all this red, gushy, squishy stuff inside a Tyrannosaurus rex leg bone. This gushy, squishy stuff still with red blood cells in blood vessels. Wow, that's still in dinosaur bones? How could that possibly last for 1 million years? No way. And we know the decay rate from scientific investigations. And so the scientists said, you're not looking at Tyrannosaurus rex material. So the scientists went back and found a hadrosaur leg. Say hadrosaur. Hadrosaur. Very good. And they opened up the hadrosaur femur bone, and look what they found. More squishy stuff. Cells there. They found little red blood cells and vessels, which are made of collagen protein. All kinds of fossils have original material in them, like this mosasaur. Say mosasaur. Mosasaur. And he was not a dinosaur because he didn't have legs, but he's an extinct marine reptile with still red colored patches. And I went to visit it just last November in the Los Angeles County Museum, and I saw it there, and I stuck my face on the glass, and I said, "This is awesome, it's still colored red." And the scientists that studied it said, hey, it's still colored red because it has blood protein still in there. Blood protein, all these other proteins like collagen, still in the dinosaur bones. Wow, how could it possibly be that old? How could it be 1 million years old if it has collagen in it? So that's our fourth clue, collagen decay. Now, here's what the clue tells us. Since the dinosaur bones still have collagen, the bones must be thousands, not millions of years old. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Now, Jesus taught this very thing. He said in Mark 10:6, but from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. Who's the male and female he's talking about? Adam and Eve. Okay, but you know, if the people at the museum are right, here's what they would want Jesus to say. Jesus should have said, but from billions of years after the Big Bang beginning of creation, God made them male and female. But Jesus didn't say billions of years after the Big Bang beginning, did he? He said, from the beginning of creation, God made the male and female. Right there at creation week on day 6, that's the beginning creation week, God made the male and female. So we have people right there alive at the very beginning, only thousands of years ago, according to Jesus' own words. Will you get this book? Kids, you're all rich and wealthy. Buy these books. Okay, our last clue is carbon decay, because I thought, hey, these proteins must have carbon in them. Maybe some of the carbon is still radioactive. So we have a version of carbon that is radioactive, so it decays. All right, and the longest this can last is 100,000 years. So we know it can last thousands of years, but the carbon-14 can't last 1,000,000 years. It can't last any longer than 100,000 years. But I've got this dinosaur bone. This is a tail vertebra from a hadrosaur, and I'm going to look for carbon-14 in there. If there's any carbon-14 inside this bone, then the bone can't be any older than how many years? 100,000 years. That's the maximum age. That's the egg timer. Have you seen an egg timer in the mom's kitchen? And you twist the egg timer for an hour, and that thing will go tick, 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 tick for an hour. But after an hour, it goes tick, 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 ding, and it goes ding. If this is 1,000,000 years old, it should have gone ding, and there would be no ticking. There would be no ticking left. That means there'd be no collagen left. All of it would have turned into dust. Did we find radiocarbon in our dinosaur bone? Yes. Yes, because I'm smiling. Yes. Did we find radiocarbon in our triceratops bone? Yes. Yes. Did we find it in our, diplodocus bone? Yes, we did. We keep finding young-looking, thousands of years old only, carbon in all these dinosaur bones. Now, this one's called Psittacosaurus. It's from China. Say Psittacosaurus. Psittacosaurus. Did we find radiocarbon in Psittacosaurus? Yes. From China. So we have this catastrophic death all over the world. Noah's flood happened only thousands of years ago. So these dinosaurs with collagen protein and with carbon, they tell us that they were deposited thousands, not millions of years ago. And that's the fifth clue. That's the fifth clue. Are you interested in my book, Guide to Dinosaurs? Wouldn't that be great? It's got a page on it that says how to go to a museum and get the most out of it even though you're a Christian. It's got a page on it that says what's it like to go on a dinosaur dig. It's got pages on it for each of the different kinds of dinosaurs. But here's the thing, kids. Will you remember this for me? And this is our last little moment together. Jesus said this in John 3, if I have told you of earthly things and you do not believe, how will you believe if I tell you heavenly things? You see, if you don't believe creation, is the creation of an earth, is that an earthly thing? The creation of the earth, that's an earthly thing, yeah. If you don't believe in the creation of the earth, the creation of the animals that live on the earth, according to Genesis, then it's going to be real tough for you to believe the heavenly things, the spiritual teachings, like you're a sinner and you have earned separation from God. What about the flood? Is the flood of water all over the earth, is that an earthly thing? Yeah, and if you don't believe the flood, it's going to be hard for you to believe the spiritual teachings in the same book called the Bible. Spiritual teachings like, even though you're a sinner, God paid the death penalty for you so that you could have relationship with the Father through the Son Jesus. See, the spiritual truths that are in the Bible are just as true as the history that's in the Bible, and science backs it up. Isn't that great? We can trust the Bible, the history in the Bible, the spiritual truths in the Bible, the earthly things, the heavenly things. It's all from God, and He wrote it for us, and science supports Scripture. Thank you, everybody.
Just a few. If you might have a question for Mr. You have one right here. Go right ahead.
How did the Triceratops even die? Did they die by volcanoes or what?
You're asking, how did the Triceratops die?
No, like all dinosaurs.
Oh, okay. Well, the dinosaurs that we see in the fossils, those all died in, I think they died in Noah's flood. So, yes, there were lots of volcanoes going off during Noah's flood. We know that because it says in Genesis 7, verse 11, that the fountains of the great deep burst forth. So I think that there were these deep fountains of water and probably some magma, which is melted rock, underneath Earth's crust. And that burst forth, it broke through the ancient crust of the earth, and all that water came up to Earth's surface. And not just water, but lots of mud and magma, and that was a total disaster. So that's how you get these dinosaur fossils, is from Noah's flood. So then you have all these waves of water that wash volcanic debris like ash and dust and dirt and mud and animals and plants and mix them all together and kills all these dinosaurs. And that's the catastrophe of the flood. Second question here, yes, sir. Okay, I think that microphone is off. Can you just yell it out for me, ma'am? Oh, how did mud make fossils? Great question. Well, mud makes fossils by covering the creature's carcass. It covers the creature carcass. You know what a carcass is? A carcass is a dead body. So you can actually make your own fossil in a grody, wonderful experiment that little boys love to do. So you just take your animal, your dead mouse or dead fish or something, and you put it in mud, and then you squeeze it down with big clamps. Okay, put some board on top and a board on bottom, and then you wait a couple of months. A couple of months later, you unscrew the clamps, you take apart the board, and you know what you got in there? You got something very much like a fossil. And so how does it work? Well, the mud comes and covers it, and then as that mud dries out, it turns into rock. And when it dries out, then bacteria stop eating that carcass. All right? So if you keep the mud underwater, will you get a fossil? No, because the water helps the bacteria stay alive, and those bacteria will eat that dead thing, and it won't turn into a fossil. So you have to have wet mud first, and then it has to dry out. Well, what does the Bible say happened on the earth? It says that water covered the earth, and then that the waters rolled off the surface of the earth, so that the earth dried out very soon after it was muddy. So that's how you make a fossil. Wet mud first, dries out, carcass is there. Yes?
How did the skeleton, how'd they put the skeleton in the museum?
Oh, great question. So what they do to put the skeleton in a museum is they go out into the field and they know it's sticking out of a rock, and then they have to take that whole rock with the bone in it out of the field, and then they put it in these big giant crates, and sometimes they lift them with helicopters. A big crate with a big pile of rock, and then they set the rock, they use a crane to set the rock in a laboratory, and then they carefully remove all the solid hard rock from around the dinosaur bone. And they use these little tiny tools with little whirly things, and they go, woo, woo, and and it carves off all the rock, and they leave the bone there. Then they position each bone in place, and they glue it in place, and then they use iron to support the skeletons, these iron bars, and that's how they put it up in a museum. All right, that's 3, sir. So we're gonna do another round. Okay, young lady.
How did the blood cells in the bone? How did they stay in the bone without going away?
Oh, good question. So how did those blood cells stay in the bone without going away for thousands of years since Noah's flood? Well, the answer is actually iron is in your blood. Did you know that you have iron in your blood? Yes, okay. Iron is the element that's in your blood that helps carry oxygen to your tissues. It turns out that iron is a preservative. So it's no surprise that you can get iron in your blood and in the dinosaur blood to help these tissues last for thousands of years. But it is a surprise if these tissues were to last for 1,000,000 years, because the laws of chemistry say that proteins should decay even if there's no bacteria. The iron keeps the bacteria away. Bacteria don't like iron, and so that's why you don't get bacteria eating the blood vessels or the blood cells. So they'll last for thousands of years because of the iron in them, partly, but they don't last for 1,000,000 years. Okay? Great question. I've got all kinds of resources on that, and I hope that you buy our book. You can even get these books on your iPad, pod, doohickey thingy, electronic books, and so you can get these books electronically, or even our Guide to Dinosaurs books. And I want everyone to sign up for our free monthly magazine, Acts and Facts. Young man,
Does little baby dinosaurs live right now?
oh, I don't think dinosaurs are alive anymore. I think they've pretty much all gone away. Yep. Isn't that a bummer? It would be neat to see one, wouldn't it? Yeah, from a great distance. Yes, ma'am.
How come animals here, when they die, how come they don't get fossils when they die?
Okay, animals, when they die today, don't turn into fossils because other creatures eat their dead bodies. Those creatures might be raccoons or birds or bacteria, fungus. But after only a few weeks, whatever creature died, that creature's body parts have been recycled into the environment, and it doesn't turn into a fossil. So the only way to get a fossil is to cover that creature and protect it from getting scavenged by birds and protect it from getting eaten by bacteria. So you have to have a catastrophe in order to have a fossil. Yep, great questions. You guys are super smart. These are wonderful questions. I think our time is up, though, so you'll have to ask me later, some other time.
I know you still have a lot more questions left. Let me encourage you also, if you'd like, to check out the books and other resources that they have here on the side. I know that Brian and some others will be around. Maybe you can catch them with a question there as well. But we want to say thank you to Mr. Thomas for coming and sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Again, we're so glad that you could be here with us today. I hope it was enjoyable and a great experience for you. Again, don't forget the resources out here on the table, and you're dismissed.
Bye, everybody. Bye. Dinosaur.